Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Pagani design PD-1701 CK2998 version. This watch is available from Pagani Design AE certified store on AliExpress for €91. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this cardboard Pagani design watch box. One removes the lid, and inside we have a foam protective panel, and the watch sits in the base inside a foam cutout panel on this piece of foam. So although basic, it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping from any damage, and I think it is acceptable, bearing in mind this is a low tier price point piece at only €91. With regards to the items, one gets this Pagani Design branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth, irrespective of the price point of a piece. And you also get this Pagani Design owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz. You also get this plastic guarantee card, and as usual the reverse isn't filled in, but there is space to fill in the date of purchase, reference number of the piece, and the dealer can stamp it. Now I'm pleased to report that this PD-1701 is covered by a 12-month international warranty, which is good. And lastly, one also gets this Pagani Design top waterproof plastic tag. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, this PD-1701 is clearly an homage to the Amiga Speedmaster CK2998 version, so similar proportions to the Speedmaster. We have a 42mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47mm, a thickness of 14.2mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 18mm at the 2-button push clasp. 2-button push clasp is signed to a high standard with the Pagani Design text logo engraved longitudinally. Beautiful luster to the longitudinal brush satin finishing to the body, and that complements the brush satin finishing to the flanks. We've also got a large mirror polished bevel, which marks the transition between the body and the flanks. Now I'm going to be critical of this because we only have the minimum 3 micro adjustment holes in the flanks. I would like to see Pagani Design update this to have 4 or 5 micro adjustment holes, because that would better allow for fine tuning the length of the bracelet. The bracelet is Amiga Speedmaster style, but there is an absence of half links in the bracelet, and the problem is by adding or subtracting one full link from the bracelet, it doesn't always give the perfect fit. Sometimes a half link is needed on the 6 or the 12 o'clock side of the bracelet, so by having a micro adjustment clasp or alternatively 4 or 5 micro adjustment holes drilled in the flanks, that would give a better fit. So we have a double dome sapphire crystal with blue tinted AR coating on the underside. Early versions of the PD-1701 did not have AR coating, so it's good to see Pagani Design have added AR coating. I think it would look better with clear anti-reflective coating, but this is subjective because some collectors prefer the blue hue of blue AR coating. The dial is a very dark sunburst blue or almost grey colour to it rather than black, and therefore the blue tinted AR coating does complement that because it does have a very dark blue, almost navy tone to the black grey dial, and blue tinted AR coating in this case does actually enhance it. So the AR coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished alpha handset. The alpha hands are correctly proportioned. They do look very similar in design and proportion to the alpha hands used on the Speedmaster CK2998, which this is an homage to. I like the contrasting white second hand for the chronograph complication. It contrasts very well with the dial and also the 60-minute ticks on the chapter ring. On the bezel, it's made from ceramic rather than aluminium, and the tachymeter scale is engraved and inlaid with white paint to a good standard. The thing to note is this has the updated 500 tachymeter scale used on later versions of the PD-1701, so it's good to see they use the later 500 tachymeter scale on this CK2998 version. However, subjectively, I would prefer if this were aluminium as per the Speedmaster, because I think it would better complement the piece, but the other way to look at it is that ceramic is harder and more scratch resistant than aluminium, so therefore it's going to be more durable and robust. But I think aesthetically this would look better as a CK2998 homage if it were aluminium with silver tachymeter scale, but again, this is subjective. Some collectors prefer the look of ceramic. Now, with regards to the dial, we have 3 sub-dials at 9, 6 and 3, and they are recessed. They've done a very good job of the sub-dials because proportions are good. The printing of the white minute ticks and second ticks on the sub-dials is very sharp and high definition and crisp. These sub-dials have a concentric sunburst pattern to them, and the subdial silver polished hands are clearly legible and correctly proportioned. I like that they're recessed and they have a concave profile, and it does look very similar visually to the Speedmaster CK2998, which this is a homage to. So symmetry of the dial is good. Now again, subjectively, I would prefer if Pagani Design deleted the date complication at 4 o'clock, because the Speedmaster CK2998 does not have a date complication. But again, some collectors like to have the date window at 4 o'clock. It is a useful complication. I think the dial would look cleaner, and I would prefer the symmetry if they deleted the date complication. So legibility is good. Now, with regards to the proportions of the double dome sapphire crystal, it's got a nice low profile to it. It does look like plexiglass or hesselite, and of course hesselite was used on the CK2998, and it does look very aesthetically pleasing. They've got the dome of it very good, but this is a thicker PD-1701. Previous versions were 13.7mm thick. This is slightly thicker at 14.2, so that's something to note. Earlier versions of the PD-1701 were lower profile. They were 13.7. This is 14.2, so it's going to be slightly thicker and more difficult to slip underneath shirt cuffs if you wear business shirts. But the AR coating works well. I like the white chronograph hand, and I like the silver mirror polished alpha hands. So with regards to the head of the piece, flawless mirror polishing to the bevels on the top edge, which mark the transition between the top of the lyre twisted lugs, which are Omega style, and the brushed satin finish flanks. The longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the flanks is done very well. Nice fine grained finish, no sharp edge to the undercuts to the flank, and the profile of the case is very similar to the Speedmaster CK2998. And on the pusher and crown guard side, there's also a nice large mirror polished bevel which runs the full length of the case and again marks the transition. So the top edge of the lyre twisted lugs are brushed satin finish to a nice fine grained finish, and the right hand flank on the crown guard side is also brushed satin finished to a flawless standard. So quality of finishing to the head of the piece is excellent. No sharp edge to the undercut. The tips of the lugs have been deburred and chamfered very well, so they don't have sharp corners, and the quality of the mirror polishing to the edge of the bezel, which is solid 316L grade stainless steel, is very good. Nice chamfer to the undercut, and that looks very aesthetically pleasing. The proportion of the stainless steel bezel does look very good. It allows the double dome boxed top hat sapphire crystal to project above it, and it's good because it's not too thick. The bezel does look very similar to a Speedmaster CK2998 bezel. So let's look at the bracelet and end links in detail. Now, female pivoted end links articulate freely. They don't feel stiff or kink, so that's the positive. But however, the negative is they rattle, because we have excessive longitudinal, lateral, side to side and up and down play, and it is significant. You can see the amount of play in every single direction. This is simply down to poor tolerances, because we have an undersized pin going through an oversized hole, and therefore we have a sloppy fit rather than a friction interference fit. So the positive is it articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, but the negative is it clicks and rattles. They need to refine this and update the tolerances, because I appreciate this is a low tier piece costing €91. One has to be realistic and expect some cost cutting measures with regards to production costs, but this is very simple to get correct. They simply need to drill a smaller sized hole or increase the size of the pin going through the hole to tighten up the tolerances. So on the other side, let's check it for continuity. Again, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, which is good, but we have play in every direction, so it clicks. Now, that's not the only problem to the bracelet. In terms of finishing, it does look very aesthetically pleasing. Longitudinal brushed satin finishing, and that contrasts with the mirror polishing to the centre links. So, it does have a beautiful lustre. The mirror polishing is done to a good standard, and the brushed satin finishing to the flanks, which complements the brushed satin finishing to the top side and underside, is done very good. Nice fine grained finish. But however, every single one of the pushpin links has excessive longitudinal, lateral, side to side and up and down play. And over the length of the bracelet, the cumulative effect of all that additional excessive play is it rattles. It's a sloppy bracelet. I'll check the other side for continuity. Now, articulates freely, so it doesn't feel stiff or kink, and this side doesn't feel stiff or kink either, which is good. But it rattles on wrist, and it is noticeable. Now, it does feel comfortable in terms of articulation on the wrist. It does feel flexible due to it articulating freely, but it doesn't have sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, so that's a positive. But the negative is the centre links, both on the top edge and the lower edge of the bracelet, they feel sharp. and the bracelet feels scratchy and rough. So when you're wearing it on wrist, it pulls arm hairs. The problem with the sharp centre links on the underside is they catch arm hairs and they pull the arm hairs in between the links. So it does feel uncomfortable to wear the bracelet. Even if you wear it tight, it still pulls arm hairs. So you can feel it sharp on the underside, on both the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side, and of course it also rattles. They really need to refine this because early versions of the PD-1701 also had this problem, but when they produced later versions such as the V3, V4, V5 and so on, they did not correct the bracelet. It still is sloppy in this latest version in 2025, and it still has the sharp edges to the centre links both on the top side and the underside, but on a positive note it doesn't have sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks. So let's look at the clasp. Two button push triggers are brushed satin finish, correctly proportioned, nice firm spring-loaded action, opens freely. The internals are solid milled 316L grade stainless steel, doesn't have sharp corners to the centre section, so that's good. The longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the top side, underside and flanks is done to a good standard, beautiful lustre, doesn't have sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks to the solid milled stainless steel clasp, so that's good. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin is dreadful. You can see lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play in every single direction, so it rattles. Again, they should have tightened up the tolerances. This is no better than the early versions of the PD-1701, and they didn't update this or improve the interference fit. So the hole is too large, the pin is undersized, and then we have this sloppy fit. My concern with this is the long-term durability. How long is it going to be before the pin in the oversized hole shears due to the excessive shear load? As you can see, very sloppy and it rattles. Let's check the centre hinge pin. Again, sloppy fit. Longitudinal, lateral, side to side, up and down play in every single direction. And on a positive note, it does articulate freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink because of course we have excess play. Finally, let's check the right hand pin. Again, lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play in every single direction, and it's significant. Just look at the amount of play. Problem is it rattles. Now, again, cumulative effect. Left hand, centre and right hand hinge pins all have excessive play, and therefore it's sloppy. It rattles. Every single one of the pins, left, centre and right, have too much play in every direction. And again, my concern is long-term durability. How long is it going to be before the left, centre or right hand hinge pin eventually fail? Because the ends of the pins are riveted over. The problem with the riveted links, or the riveted ends, is in an elongated hole they eventually wear off and the pin falls out, or alternatively it just simply shears due to the excess shear load put on it by having too much play. They really need to tighten up the tolerances of the hinge pins used in their solid milled stainless steel clasp. I appreciate this is a low tier price point piece at only €91. One has to be magnanimous about some cost cutting measures, but hinge pins and tolerances are a fundamental they need to get correct. Pagani Design are capable of doing it. They have better tolerances on other bracelet clasps. So, through micro adjustments holes, as I've detailed, is not enough. I'd like to see 4 or 5. And the other negative is we have this abhorrent pressed stainless steel diver's extension link, and they haven't even mirror polished it, which is a clear cost cutting measure for production costs in order to maximise profit margin per piece. They should simply delete this because it has lots of play in the hinge pin, so it rattles, and the spring bar also has too much play going into the body, and the right hand hinge pin also has excessive longitudinal, lateral, side to side, up and down play in every single direction. So this diver's extension link rattles. Look at the amount of play. It's absolutely dreadful. Now, on a positive note, it does snap into the body with a nice positive click, and it does deploy with a nice positive click. So it does work okay. But they could have at least mirror polished it or updated it to a solid milled EasyLink style extension, which they do use on other models such as the PD-1701, which is the Submariner data Homage, and also the PD-1664. So they really should update this because they are capable of producing solid milled 5mm EasyLink style extension links. This really is a cost cutting measure. They should simply delete it, and it's very poor quality, light gauge to the stainless steel. Right, so let's test the screw down crown and the pushers on the chronograph complication. So top pusher activates the chronograph complication, and you'll see the contrasting white chronograph hand begins to sweep around the dial. So Nice firm resistance, feels crisp, feels good. I like the heavy spring-loaded action, which is a characteristic of the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz. Feels robust, feels reliable, nice firm click. So you can hear it, it's audible, but also feel it. It's got a good positive click. I like the feeling, the action of it. When you press the pusher, you can feel and hear the click, and that starts the chronograph hand sweeping around the dial, as you can see. Pressing the top pusher has a nice crisp solid click. You don't have to push it too hard, but it feels firm and robust and reliable. Pressing the lower pusher will fly back the chronograph hand to 12 o'clock or the 60 on the tachymeter. So nice firm resistance. I'm just going to test it 2 more times. So it feels very good. The top pusher starting and stopping the chronograph feels crisp, feels good, reliable. The lower pusher also feels nice and positive. It's got a nice heavy click to it. I like the feeling, I like the sound of it. It feels reliable and robust. So stop it again, reset. Now reset's bang on 12 o'clock or 60 on the tachymeter scale, so the alignment is correct. I'm just going to check it a third time. I always like to check a chronograph complication 3 out of 3 times to check the alignments of the chronograph hand to make sure it resets bang on 60, bang on the 12 o'clock index every single time. Nice positive click to the stop, and let's reset it, and it flies back bang on 12 o'clock. So alignment is perfect and the chronograph complication works correctly. So it's very reliable and it's something I really like about the VK63. So screw down crown, coin edge finished. Chamfered to the edge of it, so that deletes the sharp tips of the coin edge teeth, and matte B blasted background and silver mirror polished Pagani design shield emblem. Crown is correctly proportioned, it's partially recessed into the right hand flank, so it's got the right size to it. Feels grippy and tactile, you can get good purchase with your index finger and thumb, so it's good. So screw down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters of water resistance, which is strong specification. Feels silky smooth, sublime screw down crown execution. Credit where credit's due. This is something that Pagani Design do very well. These screw down crowns they're using on the PD-1701s are very good. This is silky smooth. Minimal number of turns required to unscrew it fully. So when you pull it out to the first click position, that is the quick set date complication. If you look at the date window at 4 o'clock, you can see it clicks over with a nice positive click. The Arabic numerals are correctly proportioned on the black date wheel, and the white Arabic numerals have a nice crisp high definition fonts. They're not too thick or blurry. And the alignment is correct. Both the singles and the double Arabic numerals are aligned correctly in the date window. They're not too far to the left or right. They are bang on the centre, and they're not too high or too low in the date window. The date window is the correct proportion, and the proportions of the Arabic numerals are also correct. Nice light clicking indexing to it. So to put this into perspective, it feels lighter than the quick set date complication on a Seiko NH35A, which you will all be familiar with. The VK63 has a light clicking action to the indexing. Quick set complication works well. Pulling it out to the second click position on the crown is the time setting position. Now, the VK63 does have hacking and a quick set date, as I've demonstrated. The alpha hands are correctly proportioned. I want to give you credit to Pagani Design here because often low-tier Chinese brands have a tendency to undersize the proportions and the length of the handsets they're using. But these mirror polished alpha hands, which are CK2998 style, are the correct length. The minute hand, which is an alpha hand, the tip of it extends all the way to the white minute ticks on the chapter ring, so it's long enough. The hour hand, which is also an alpha hand, extends all the way to the printed indices, which are C3 patina superluminova. So correctly proportioned. I like the size, I like the length of the hands. Now in terms of the action, setting the time, feels smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise when you cycle through the 12 hours. So light resistance to the gearing, has 0 joules, has very low friction to it, but it feels good. Feels reliable, feels robust, feels very light. There's minimal backplay. When you rotate the crown clockwise or anti-clockwise, you don't have to take up a lot of slack, so I like that. I like that there isn't a lot of backplay to take up. The VK63 feels very reliable, and it does feel pleasant to set the time. Pushing it back in restarts the VK63 Mecha Quartz. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup, this is perfect. There's a good interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. So, silky smooth screw down crown, and they really deserve credit because this is a low tier piece at only €91, but the screw down crown is outstanding. Silky smooth, I really like it. Pushes feel good, screw down crown feels good. So let's look at the Caseback. Solid 316L grade stainless steel caseback, concentric CNC lathe tool machined to the outer portion. Centre section has a matte bead blasted background to it, and it is engraved with mirror polishing for the moon, and there's also a space shuttle. So it does look good. Does have the aesthetic of a Speedmaster with the elements of the moon and the planets in the background, so I think it's well executed, although subjectively I think it would look better if they simply engraved or embossed the Pagani Design Shield emblem and Pagani Design Text logo, which they do on other pieces. I think the Pagani Design Shield would look aesthetically pleasing on the caseback, but however, this is subjective. Some collectors might like this moon, the space shuttle and the planets in the background. Quality of the engraving is very good. Around the circumference we've got the Pagani Design logo and the specifications of the piece. The engraving is sharp and crisp, it's high definition, doesn't feel sharp or rough. The case back is low profile rather than a bubble back case back. Does feel very flat and smooth against the wrist, so it's comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. The milled slots are very well finished, no sharp edges or burrs to the milled slots. The mirror polishing to the circumference is done to a good standard, and also the concentric CNC lathe tool machining to the outer portion of it is also done to a good standard. So the caseback finishing is good, and I like the profile of it because it's flat rather than bubble back. The end links, which are female pivoted end links, are a good snug fit to the head of the piece. The finishing to the underside to the head of the piece is concentric CNC lathe tool machine to a good standard, and as I've detailed, nice large chamfers machined to the tips of the lugs, and that means the tips of the case do not have any sharp edges or corners, doesn't dig into the wrist. The undercuts to the flanks, both on the crown guard side and the left hand flank, they don't feel sharp. So the deburring and chamfering of the head of the piece is good. Finishing of the case back is good, and the bezel. The head of the piece is excellent finishing throughout. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report that I can easily slide 2 fingers underneath the bracelet and clasp at all times, and this is on position 3, the maximum of 3 out of 3 micro adjustments, so this will fit even up to a very large 9-inch wrist size. The minimum size this will support is down to a 6-inch. There are enough removable links from the Speedmaster style bracelet from the 6 and the 12 o'clock side. You can remove enough links to size it down to a minimum 6-inch and up to a 9-inch wrist size, as you can see. But the negative is it's a sloppy bracelet which rattles, and although the edges, the top edge and the low edge of the flanks do not have sharp edges, the centre links on the underside have sharp edges and they pull arm hairs. So it doesn't feel like a comfortable bracelet, although it does articulate freely. Now in terms of wrist presence, this is clearly best suited to collectors with a larger 7 to 8-inch wrist because, like the Speedmaster, which this is an homage to, it has a large 42mm head of the piece. Now, if you have a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches, you will enjoy the wrist presence. In terms of proportions, it does look and feel very similar to a Speedmaster 42mm case. The lug to lug is very good. It's 47mm, so that will fit you regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist or a 7 to 8-inch wrist respectively. It's 1mm between the below the perfect sweet spot of 48. 47 is a nice compact lug to lug. It does wrap around the wrist very well due to the curved undercut to the lyre lugs on the case. So case proportions do visually look and also feel very similar to a Speedmaster, and visually it does look similar to the CK2998 Speedmaster, which this is an homage to. Blue hue to the AR coating does look aesthetically pleasing because it complements the dark navy blue grey sunburst style. Legibility of the alpha hands is good. They contrast very well with the patina C3 Superluminova, and the white contrasting chronograph hand also contrasts very well. So legibility is good. I think it would look better if they had an aluminium bezel insert, as I've detailed, rather than the glossy finish of the ceramic, but of course the ceramic is hard and more scratch resistant. The tachymeter scale is clearly legible, and the engraving is very high definition and sharp and crisp on the ceramic bezel insert, and they've done a good job of inlaying the ceramic insert on the tachymeter with white paint. So, the thing to note is, this is taller than previous versions of the PD-1701, and it's a negative because earlier versions of the PD-1701 were 13.7mm thick. This is slightly thicker. It's 14.2, so it's going to be slightly more difficult to slip this piece underneath shirt cuffs if you wear business shirts, because the earlier versions were 13.7, they were slightly too thick, above the sweet spot of 13, but you could still easily slip the piece underneath a shirt cuff. 13.7 was only 0.7 above the sweet spot of 13. This is noticeably thicker, it's 14.2, so just think about that. This one is 14.2, but previous versions of the PD-1701 were only 13.7. So this is 0.5 mm thicker than previous versions, and this is a disappointment. They've really made a mistake in scaling up the thickness from 13.7 up to 14.2. It does look and feel more top heavy as a result. It looks like a thicker piece on wrist. You can really notice the additional 0.5 mm. And it's a shame because they really don't need to make it thicker. They could have made the Caseback and the crystal the same thickness and therefore kept it down to 13.7, which was good. So 14.2, slightly too thick, and I think they should reduce it by 0.5 mm like previous versions of the PD-1701. Now, in terms of comfort and feel-good factor, the head of the piece looks and feels comfortable. The feel-good factor and the comfort level is good with the head of the piece if you wear this on a strap. But the bracelet really spoils the piece because it feels sharp, pulls arm hairs, doesn't feel comfortable. So the bracelet feels uncomfortable, but the head of the piece itself feels comfortable. This is still worth buying if you wear it on a strap. For example, a rubber strap, leather strap or NATO strap. You'll enjoy the wrist presence. Does look like a CK2998 Speedmaster. It's just a shame they haven't improved the quality of the bracelet. So bracelet rattles. Has the correct taper for Speedmaster Homage, 20 down to 18. I personally think 20 to 16 is the better taper, but of course it is a Speedmaster Homage, so they do have straighter parallel bracelets on the Speedmaster. 20 to 18 does look okay, but it does add a lot of meat to the bracelet. It's a heavy piece, 150 grams, but bear in mind it does have a very long bracelet, and even I with an 8-inch wrist would remove 6 links from the bracelet to size it down to an 8-inch wrist size. So you're going to be removing lots of links. That will reduce it to below 150 grams, and of course 150 or below is the sweet spot. So comfort level and feel good factor of the head of the piece is good. Comfort level and feel good factor of the bracelet is poor, but does look like a good homage to the CK2998 Speedmaster. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, initially it looks okay, but it is disappointing. They use C3 Superluminova, but unfortunately, like many other Pagani design pieces, they have not improved the quality of the C3 Superluminova they're using. We're clearly looking at 3 to 4 layers on the dial, and then we're looking at 4 to 5 layers on the alpha handset. So you can see the exciter in the alpha hands, which is Patina C3 Superluminova, is glowing brightly. So the exciter on the handset seems to be glowing more brightly than on the dial, so clearly they've applied less layers of C3 Patina Superluminova to the dial on the printed indices. This is a disappointment. So to rectify this, they need to apply 5 to 6 layers of C3 Superluminova on the printed indices on the dial and the same number of layers on the alpha handset. The alpha handset are performing okay. You can see the exciter is glowing okay. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to autofocus on it. So I would describe the alpha handset as good enough. I think although we're looking at 3 to 4 layers versus 5 to 6, the alpha hands are looking good. The exciter is glowing brightly, nice green tone to it, which looks like tritium. But you can now see the problem. If you look at the printed indices on the dial, you can see it's now fading very quickly, and this clearly tells me this is 2 to 3 layers or a maximum of 3 to 4 layers of C3 Patina Superluminova. So this is a cost-cutting measure too far. Now one has to be magnanimous about some production cost-cutting measures with low-tier pieces at €91 price point. But this is something that is inexcusable, even at €91 in the low tier. 5 to 6 layers is optimum. It is the industry standard for good reason. On the dial and also the handset, it should be an even 5 to 6. We're clearly looking at more layers on the alpha handset and less layers on the dial. Now you can see the problem. The dial is now fading to nothing and fading quickly. The exciter is negligible performance. Pagani design really need to improve the quality, the number of layers they're using, and other brands can do it. For example, if you compare this to other low-tier pieces such as the Steel Dive SD1953, now I appreciate that's a Submariner date homage, not a Speedmaster homage, but they're using 5 to 6 layers of BGW9 on a ceramic bezel insert, the dial and the hands, and it is stellar performance. And that's €80. This is €91, but clearly not as good. C3 Superluminova is not expensive, and it would increase the production costs by a minimal margin, it wouldn't reduce their wholesale production, their profit margin per piece, for example. So they could apply 5 to 6 layers on the dial, 5 to 6 layers on the handsets, and still retail this piece at €91. You can see the dial is now dreadful. It's fading to nothing, although the Alpha handset is still performing okay. So room for improvement. Disappointing in 2025. Although they have introduced AR coating, which is good, early versions didn't have it, the C3 Superluminova is still poor quality on the PD-1701 CK2998 we're looking at. So let's discuss the movement use, because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So you'll all be familiar with the Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz, which is made in Japan. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Mecha Quartz movement, has 0 joules, has hacking, and also quick set date complication, which works well as I've demonstrated. It has a 3-year battery life, which is very impressive. Now, the 3-year battery life is based upon you running the chronograph complication for 60 minutes per day, but in reality, you're not going to be running the chronograph complication for anything like 60 minutes per day. So therefore, although the stated battery life is 3 years for a VK63, in reality, they can often have a 4 to 5 or even longer battery life. So potentially you could buy this piece and wear it every day with a minimum 3-year battery life, or even up to 4 or 5 years plus if you don't run the chronograph for 60 minutes per day. So long battery life is a positive benefit. The stated accuracy is plus or minus 20 seconds per month. So just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 20 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month is incredible accuracy. That is better than plus or minus 1 second per day. So the VK63 has a long battery life of 3 years plus, but it also is incredibly accurate at plus or minus 20 seconds per month. No negatives to it whatsoever. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Mecha Quartz movement. At this price point, €91 in the low tier, the VK63 is the correct choice. Made by Seiko in Japan. Good quality, build quality, quality control, materials, finishing, reliability is excellent. It's well proven. I like the quick set date complication. I also like it has hacking, so one can set the time precisely to the second. And above all else, I like the reliability. It's a robust Mecha Quartz. So, last, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price points. So, low tier price point piece, €91. Difficult piece to weigh up, because what we're looking at here is a good quality head of the piece on a poor quality bracelet. Now, it is still worth buying at €91 for the head of the piece alone. For example, if you wear this on a leather strap, rubber strap or NATO strap, yes, it is an excellent piece, even without the bracelet at €91. The VK63 is good, the AR coating is good, the Lume is the main negative, but the head of the piece, the finishing is good, the ceramic tachymeter scale on the bezel insert is very good, chronograph works well, screw down crown is silky smooth, quality of the finishing throughout bezel, head of the piece, caseback is excellent. So head of the piece is good, bracelet is poor, and it's a real shame because the bracelet really lets down the piece. It's a sloppy bracelet that rattles, end links are sloppy, bracelet is sloppy, and the clasp is sloppy, and then we also have this abhorrent pressed diver's extension link, which is also sloppy. So they really need to update the bracelet and clasp in order to refine it. So I'm going to say head of the piece is excellent, bracelet is poor. Overall, bracelet and clasp together, I'm going to say it's okay quality and okay value at €91. It is still worth buying for the head of the piece, but really you need to consider wearing it on a strap rather than this dreadful rattling bracelet. Bracelet is the main negative, head of the piece is good. So I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration, but bear in mind the shortcomings of the quality control, builds quality and tolerances of the poor quality C3 Superluminova and the poor quality sloppy bracelet. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Pagani design PD-1701 CK2998 version. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.